that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Cooking with gas.
So if you remember, back last fall, we came before you guys about signing a resolution for the state to do a traffic study at these intersections. We found a program that we could participate in where the city would be responsible for 50% of the traffic light upgrades and the state would pay for the other 50%. Well, to do this, they had to do the traffic study to make sure the lights are warranted. Well, after the traffic study, they came back to us and said that the traffic lights are not warranted at these 4 locations. So because of this, they said we could remove the traffic lights if we wanted, and we're also not eligible for the program because the lights were not warranted in the first place. So kind of staff has been talking, and we've kind of came up with the idea, and kind of I've emailed you guys this afternoon, an email from ODOT, discussing kind of what lights they thought we talked about removing. And kind of their assumption or their idea was possibly removing the A streets, leaving the one at Steve Owens and Main, and removing the one at 5th and Main, since it's already have a 4-way flashing light there because it was damaged.
So,
This is the actual traffic study that they did at each intersection. There's actually 9 warrants. They do 8 because the last one has to deal with railroads, and there's not a railroad close to those intersections. And as you can see, that each one of those warrants, it was not satisfied for a traffic light, and I have included all 4 of those.
so Tyler, just to be clear on the language, a warrant is just a requirement.
Yes, sir.
Meeting a certain requirement or need. They use the term
If you
warrant.
remember, sometimes we come up here and talk about like MUTCD, Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's a booklet that people go by as far as traffic control, pretty much anything to do with that. And there's a section in there, it's actually 4C, that talks about traffic light warrants. And you go through these warrants and determine if the traffic light is warranted there based on these warrants. So, and kind of our idea was if we remove the lights, there's a section in MUTCD about the steps to go to if you do remove them. And obviously, through the email I sent you guys, ODOT would request a resolution be sent from us saying we'd like to remove these. But and there's steps that we go through as far as leaving the lights up, but covering them. So in case we come to find out that it doesn't work well, that we could still open them back up and have the lights used again. There's just it's like 90 days you cover them. There's just different steps that you go through.
Are all 4 of these malfunctioning? I know some of them are not functioning correctly.
Yes, sir. They're not working at the best. I mean, sometimes there's a conflict with possibly pedestrian lights. We get a lot of questions on the A street that does not have a turn signal. It just has the green light, and that is because the pedestrian crossings they need to be upgraded. And ODOT suggested, since they have not been upgraded, that we just have the green light, so people do not. If you have an arrow, then you don't have to yield. But since you just have the green light, you have to yield for pedestrians.
That's on eastbound on Steve Owens at 8.
Yes, sir.
That was the other. I mean, do all of y'all have a sense of the locations they're talking about when you read the?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I don't.
Well, there are 3 lights on Steve Owens Boulevard that 2 of them are on the A's.
Okay.
The A's are a couplet.
So, like right by the Farm Bureau office is one of them.
Yes, sir.
Right, by Stacy's office, and then on the other side.
The west side.
West side
Okay.
would be right. Yeah. And then Main Street and Steve
Right.
Owens.
And the problem it creates for us is because they operate the A's as a couplet. We have the couplet goes south 1 block.
What's a couplet
Couplet is it's a
besides a poem?
yeah.
Type.
It's where you have a set of one-way streets that are a block apart or more. So they serve in tandem to move traffic.
Okay.
You can't have one without the other. So you've got a northbound leg of the couplet and you've got a southbound leg of the couplet. So
The street divides it.
in this case, we have a street and 2
Right.
blocks that are separating it. Most places where you have a couplet, there's only a block difference. Like you'll have on the west side of a block, it'll be the southbound lane. On the east side of the block, it'll be the northbound lane.
Okay.
So in this particular situation, you've got the couplet on the A's, and you've got a light at both of those. And because of the couplet, the one-way direction goes south of Steve Owens. So we've had requests from business owners who would like to have that return to two-way. And you can't do that with a traffic light because there is not room for turn lanes. You'd have to have a dedicated turn lane in order to have a difference in the direction of the street. Do you follow me? So if you wanted to open it up the A's
To two-way.
to two-way, you would have to remove the light or put in a turn lane. And there's not room on Steve Owens for a turn lane. So in order to satisfy the request of the resident, we had to contract or ask ODOT to conduct this traffic study. Well, the long and short of it is they've come back and said, well, the traffic counts do not justify having that light there. So as a result of that, we're not going to provide you with any funding. So if you want to keep that light city, you have to pay for 100% of its upkeep. Now the problem that we're having with the lights on the A's is the conduit that runs the wires underneath the road is
It's falling in.
it's corroding and falling apart. So we'll have some costs associated with that. Now on the location of Main and Fifth, it's the fact that the lights are so old, they're antiquated, and it's hard to find parts. I mean, we
We're
had
talking
lights.
about right out here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you recall, when we had this stretch of bad weather this past year, where things were so wet, we shorted out a lot of those lights. We had heck finding parts to get those lights back up. It took us months
Yes, sir.
to get those parts back. So we're looking at trying to get rid of all those old lights that we don't need. And we've got other items on the agenda tonight to talk to you about D Street
Yes, sir.
and the lights that are on D Street. So the staff proposal here is to leave the light at Steve Owens and Main. It would become our responsibility to maintain that because the traffic counts don't warrant having a light there. You could replace it with a four-way stop if you so chose. But to remove the lights at both.
About right there at Otterstop?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
They don't, the traffic count there, according to the state.
Yes, sir.
doesn't
According to the
justify
state,
a
it
light.
doesn't.
Does not
Wow.
justify light. The A's clearly don't. And if you remove the A's, you could turn the south, the segments of the A's that are one-way south of Steve Owens back into two-way streets. And you would have a stop sign at Steve Owens, and Steve Owens would have the right-of-way through there. So you would still have the stop. The three stops is cumbersome sometimes when you have to, if you are unfortunate and catch all three. On the Fifth and Main, it's pretty easy for us to justify taking that one out because since it got hit by that truck, people have gotten used to it. What we would do now is we would remove the four-way stop, allow traffic on Main, northbound and southbound to have no stop, and have stop signs at Fifth on both sides of Main. In fact, we've talked about lighting those signs.
Yes, sir.
so
We've
that-
talked about lighting and even putting, if you've ever seen them when they put new stop signs in, they'll put flags over the top of them to draw motorist attention to them.
I know if you were like me the first day that stop sign was there and you weren't used to it, you may have caught yourself almost running it because you weren't familiar with it being there. And that's the problem with
I
new
did
stop
just
signs.
the other day.
Yeah, yeah. So that would be our recommendation on the ODOT situation.
So take down or cover,
Yes, sir.
cover two, take down one and leave one up.
Well, we would certainly take down the one on Fifth and Main
Yes, sir.
because it's out now, and we already know that that won't be a problem if we remove that light. But on the A's, the recommendation is to bag those lights
For now.
and then see if we, the engineers can project what the situation is going to be like, but only real time allows us to do that. And if we have a problem, then we can go back to looking at.
And we will talk to ODOT as far as if we have to pass a resolution before we put the bags on them or after we put the bags on them. And just,
Was there any request from, on the southwest A to make that two-way? I mean,
No.
I can understand on the southeast.
We have not had any requests on the southwest one.
It's all that goes by the school, doesn't it?
Yeah. There isn't really much down that road.
Mhm. But it does go right by the school.
Yeah.
What kind of cost would it incur to keep the one on Fifth and Main it's down completely, but
Yes, sir. And
I get a lot
it's
of complaints from people.
it's currently not tall enough either. So after the truck hit it, it's just by federal regulations, MUTCD, it's not tall enough. So we've never done any traffic lights here at the city, but from talking to ODOT, you're looking at 200,000 for a new traffic light with pedestrian
I just need the
crossings.
number. Thank you.
That's a number. I've always been amazed what those things cost.
Yeah, I've heard that once before, and I was like, wow.
If we bag them and then we don't need them in those locations, can they be used in other locations?
That's kind of what we were talking about, is taking them down and just having them for spare parts for the other locations.
Was the other locations the one that we currently have stop signs at as well on Main?
They're at 5th and Main?
No, the two
Central.
A's, the two A's don't have stop signs currently,
No.
do they?
No.
No, but on Main Street, I think it's 5th and A, just right up here, with a stop sign, and then over by the Coleman.
Uh-huh. Oh, about putting them there?
No, I'm just wondering, are we gonna need another one over there, or is that one that don't merit one there at 5th and Main?
It doesn't merit one.
So we'll be bagging it, or?
Yes, sir. And I don't know if you guys have seen the ones that have like the flashing lights around them. Like if you're leaving Quapaw, I believe one right there has it. So I mean, just we've been talking with ODOT back and forth, and we said, what about putting one of those up for a little while till people get used to it, and then removing it. And she said that was a good idea, putting flags on them, just different things to draw people's attention.
So, is there an action item here, Jeff?
Yes, sir. We have the recommended motion on the screen, but it's to basically direct staff to bring back a resolution to you to remove the stoplights at 5th and Main, Steve Owens and A Street Southeast, and Steve Owens and A Street Southwest.
We do have to do these things by either resolution or ordinance.
And not the last part that's listed though, right? Oh, sorry, and leave the stoplight, okay, I see it.
What if,
Go ahead.
what if A Street became truck route? Then would it merit lights?
It probably would, but I don't know.
Well, we're going to talk about the truck route now, and I think the traffic study that we did on the truck route indicated not many trucks were using the truck route.
We have the total numbers for that too.
So I'm not sure. I think we'll get into that in more details to whether or not it's even actually truly a bona fide truck route at this point. So.
And Councilman, since you'd be essentially telling me to bring back a resolution, if this motion passed, that doesn't mean in the meantime, you couldn't choose a different course of action
That's why I brought it up.
before
because
voting. Yes, sir.
I don't wanna change something on, might change something else.
We wanted to
Yes,
bring
sir.
this to you tonight because you're not really doing anything yet. You're just basically hearing about it and scheduling it for a later meeting, but it gives the public plenty of time to comment on it.
What about the two-way part? Does that need to be in a motion, or?
That would be a separate, you would probably
Ordinance.
by ordinance have to change the one-way street to a two-way
But
street.
you don't need it right now?
No, sir, we
Okay.
just,
And is that on both A's that you were thinking about doing that, north of Steve Owens, or just on?
we've only had requests from property owners on the southeast one.
I can ask the
Southeast.
school.
South of, Steve Owens.
I suspect that once this appears in the press and our viewers at home get to view this, we'll get some comments, and we welcome those. So this will give us an opportunity to flesh out, who's concerned about this, who's not concerned about it.
And so tonight, you're just asking us to authorize staff to draft a resolution, which can be changed, as we get feedback,
Yes, sir.
but this would kind of kick off the process. Is everybody comfortable with starting the process?
Yeah.
Okay, then can we have a motion, please?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve bringing back a resolution to remove stoplights at Fifth and Main, Steve Owens and A Street Southeast, and Steve Owens and A Street Southwest, while leave the stoplight at Steve Owens and Main Street.
And a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Johnson.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Your Honor, just so that I can be explicitly clear for some of the folks that are watching this on TV, in doing this, you've just asked us to bring this back for further consideration in a later meeting. No changes have actually been made tonight.
Okay. And if you have an opinion one way or the other, let us know. Item number 3, approve repairs to the yellow slide at Miami Municipal Pool. Tyler, you're
Yes, sir.
really popular tonight.
Yes, sir. I brought Jamie Tallman also. He's the parks manager to talk about this.
Okay?
Last year, the yellow slide was closed down, if you guys remember. We had a lot of questions about when will it open. And so we've kind of talked. Last year we had an inspection done on the slide by the company that makes the slide. And their issues they found were more maintenance issues. So tonight we're asking for approval to repair these maintenance issues.
Can I ask how much a new slide costs?
Got my question.
You have to ask Jamie. I'm not for sure.
I couldn't really actually tell you how much it would be, but it would be expensive.
Do we ha-
9,000's a lot of money.
Do we remember what this slide cost? I mean, I know it was part of a very
It
large
was,
project.
it was part of
but-
the rec fund, but I couldn't tell you. Kim, do you remember? What was it, 400,000
For a slide?
Slide?
for the slide, yellow slide?
We're in the wrong business.
No kidding.
It's a special kind of slide. I mean, it's a speed slide, a super speed slide.
If the slide is open back up, we're trying to take some additional measures. We've added signage that they suggested. We're also we've been talking back and forth with them. We don't currently have a slide or a sign on the slide as far as a human, with the correct body positioning and everything to go down the slide. So we're working with them as far as getting one of those. We're going to have a lifeguard up there all the time. We're going to individually train our lifeguards for this. And probably even videotape it. That way there won't be any questions that, you've had proper training. We're going to have a no tolerance policy for riders. I mean, if you don't follow the rules, then you'll be kindly asked not to use the slide again.
Tyler and, sorry, sir.
No, go ahead.
Tyler and the other gentleman met with me today, and I had a specific question and I had a specific risk management concern. The question was related to the fact that at some point in time, part of the bottom of the slide was cut off, removed. Nobody knows why. Nobody here remembers why.
Supporting.
Not the support, I mean the actual slide itself, the part you lay on.
Okay.
Part of that at the bottom at some point in time was removed. And I was told, Kim may remember, but these gentlemen didn't know why. I asked if the folks who inspected the slide were made aware of that and asked about it. And they tell me that they were, that they checked the angle and said it was good as it was. Which left with me from sort of that liability or risk management perspective, a request, from the legal department as it were, please engage in training and make sure that the staffers are on site at all times and they take their responsibilities seriously, no winking, no nodding. And having said that, of course, I mentioned I had no idea what the council would think. In other words, if someone's going to be letting, whether they're 40-year-old adults or 8-year-old children, whatever, get on the slide, I was strongly recommending that there be a full-time attendant at the top of the slide who was willing and capable of requiring people to use it properly.
Which we have a lifeguard up there at all times right now. And they, tell them how to go down it. But, that's going to be the main thing we're going to have to enforce. So.
And there will be no, previously they had a mat and there will be no mats.
Yeah, that was one thing they did say in the survey that we had done. They said the mats was a no-go. So they said strictly laying your back, feet crossed, hands behind your head. That's how you're supposed to go down the slide.
I'm listening to David. I think it's not only having somebody up there to watch it, but having somebody up there with the authority and the ability to say, "I'm sorry, you can't go down," no, regardless of how old they are or not. Because I know most of our lifeguards are young adults
Yeah, high school
and
kids.
teenagers, and I know there's lots of adults that go down the slide too, so making sure that they clearly understand, regardless of how old they are, they have the authority and are required to tell them no if it's not.
Tyler
Permissible.
also suggested the possibility of a video monitor, and whether that's the way to go or not, I don't know, but that came up in conversation as well.
How old is this slide? How long's it been there?
6.
6?
No, the blue one was before.
And the end was cut off in the beginning because of the mats and it was too fast. And so we made that adjustment in the very beginning to try to make it safer.
I would prefer to get more information on it. Visit with David more and Jeff.
Do you have a picture showing the end of the slide?
No.
We do not.
And how long will the repairs take? In other words, how long before the season starts? If we don't make this decision now.
When we called her
Yesterday.
yesterday, she said if it was approved, that she would be here in March and they could have it done before we opened up Memorial Day weekend.
She would be here when?
If we was into March, starting March, she would be here before Memorial, it would be done before Memorial Day weekend.
I don't mean to be a killjoy. I like find a lot of things are a little bit dangerous or a little bit exciting. You know, football, for example, baseball. A lot of things carry risk. And I don't mean to give the wrong impression, but these have been described as what, super fast or high speed slides, super speed slides, and that's okay. But if they're not going to use it the right way, don't use it at all. Is my legal opinion.
Have we had any accidents, David?
Yes.
Okay. What does that do to our insurance? And
I think over $20,000 in cash money was paid out in claims last summer.
okay,
Something along
Summer
those lines.
before last.
Summer before last. Excuse me. It
Is
wasn't
it just
all-
carelessness on these people's part, or is the slide just missing some safeties or?
One of the
floor?
things that bothered me, sir, was that I had concerns about the level of supervision when I investigated the claims. Just did. Part of my concerns about the level of supervision arose from my observation that, you know, I think well-intentioned people weren't there when the thing was built, so they weren't quite sure how to administer it. That was a problem. And then, of course, one of the things that I constantly ran into, well, I shouldn't say constantly, but over the course of 2 or 3 claims, was that the people who would say they got hurt on the slide would say, you know, immediately after I cracked my head on it, that was the typical thing, I would meet with staff who would tell me that, yeah, they knew there was a problem and, you know, you're not the first person to crack their head on the slide. And which makes it kind of tough to defend.
Once you're aware of the problem.
So,
I
my,
was gonna
my
say, I
concern-
think the mats were a significant issue because they do speed things up dramatically.
my concern's training and supervision.
That's to Christian's point, you've gotta have someone up there that's assertive enough to speak up. If you don't, it doesn't matter.
What are we repairing for $9,000?
It is actually the start of the slide. It's where you actually
That
sit
flat
down.
area at the top?
It's where you sit down. It's actually where the water starts. It's got a crack in it. And it's
Doesn't look like
leaking.
there's any support across the top there.
It's actually bolted all in up on top. There's planks that go all the way across there up on top and metal support beams, angle iron underneath.
They
It
were-
actually
Okay,
sits
you're
on.
talking about on the platform up there.
On the platform up
That's
on
where
top.
I've not been down the slide.
And
structure.
It's actually cracked and it's leaking water. And
Okay.
what the water is leaking down on the metal beams that actually hold the whole slide up, and it's causing the paint to flake off, and it's causing it to rust,
Corrosion.
corrosion.
And they're also going to, according to the letter that I read, add some support
cross beams.
Cross
The
beams.
nine-
So we're gonna repair or replace
The start. We're replacing the start pan,
Okay.
and then it was $9,100 to repair the start pan, and then they suggested that if there was any other issues that they would point them out to us. But when the study was done, that was what they found.
We're
But they
gonna
also
paint too?
Do I?
You're gonna have painting done and?
Yeah, yes, sir. We're gonna try to get the painting done, but we need to get the water to stop dripping
I'm
out
just
of
trying to get
before.
an idea of what we're spending 9,000 on.
That's the whole,
The
that
whole-
whole start pan
Mhm.
up there.
At what
The whole
point,
thing was 400, that's,
It's
I'm sorry, Christie.
I was just, at what point were the mats discontinued?
We, after they did the study last year, is when we stopped putting them, but of course, we didn't have it in service last year,
I
so.
would tend to agree with Joe before we make a final decision. I'd like to understand better the risk, what our risks were when we had the mats and the decrease in that risk now that we don't have the mats. And have some more conversation with David about it.
Is there a way, Tyler, for the people that sold us the slide to give us some of that sort of data? We've all said go a lot faster on the mass, but what does that really mean?
Okay, we can talk to them and see what they could come up with or what they have.
And it sounds like right now we are gonna take no action on this item. And ask you to get some more information for us.
Okay.
See whatever information they can provide that relates to the safety or the speed or whatever with the slide relative, with and without mats.
Okay.
Okay.
We will see what we can come up with and bring it back.
Okay. In the meantime, David, we'll probably want to have some conversations with you, it sounds like, too. Okay, item number 4, presentation of Phase 4 reconstruction streets.
Yes, sir. We just wanted tonight to present the streets that we're going to do with Phase 4. After Phase 3 is done, which they're finishing up right now, we're anticipating $1.8 to $1.7 million left for Phase 4. And it will consist of reconstruction of the streets like we did on Phase 3, and maybe do some crack sealing and slurry sealing if our budget allows. The streets that we're going to reconstruct, BJ Tunnel, some people may know it as East BJ Tunnel. It's there, you can turn right off the truck route right before you get around the curve. Right there, if you notice, there's a lot of rutting in that road, especially in the lane coming towards the truck route. So we're going to redo that. We're going to fix the drainage there. A lot of the road's sloughing off on the side because it's so narrow. So we're going to try to improve that. We have 13th Avenue Northeast from East Street to Main Street. That's a highly traveled road. Then we have I-Northwest from 9th to 12th, and then in Northwest from BJ Tunnel to 100 foot past 10th. So these are some streets some older streets in the Northwest that we've picked out. And then the Coleman Alley. There's been issues of water getting in the Coleman Alley, into the Coleman, and we're going to improve that. We're also getting ready to start in a couple weeks. The utilities that are overhead, we have a lot of our electric lines overhead there in that alley. We're going to put those underground, so it's a lot nicer looking alley. We're going to go with an inverted crown in that alley so that the water stays in the center and then goes out. These are just this is the East BJ Tunnel. You can see the rutting there in the outside lane. Here's 13th. It goes from Main Street to East Street. Here's a close-up of I-Northwest. We're going to try to obviously fix the drainage. You can see right there the huge alligator cracking where people stop right there. And then there's in Northwest. So there's really no action tonight. We just kind of wanted to let everyone know what Phase 4 involved. We're getting ready to finalize the plans on these streets in the next couple weeks. What we do is we have a walkthrough whenever we finalize the plans with the engineering firm, Chuck and I, Joe and Mike, everybody that'll have a part of it. And just that way, if there's any issues that are brought up right there on the spot, and we can correct them before construction starts. We're going to bid these out a lot earlier this year, so we'll be late spring so that we can get started earlier. And there was a question asked today about 4th Street, for example. Why is it not opened yet? Whenever we do a concrete street, they take cylinders each day that they pour the street. And what they do is they pour these cylinders. They're yay big, yay tall, and they go back in the lab. They set them in the lab, and then at 3 days, at 7 days, and at 21 days, we break the cylinders. And the cylinders have to break at a certain strength before we open the street. The concrete's curing, so we don't want to have vehicles on it to damage the street. That's why we have it all blocked off and keep people off of it. And then once it breaks at a high enough strength, then we open them up to traffic.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, Tyler. I had someone call me yesterday that lived over there and said the street was done on Friday, and why weren't the barricades down?
Yes, sir.
So
We're trying to protect our investment, make them last as long as we can. So,
Okay. Any questions for Tyler on the street item? Item 4.
Reconstruction, I have a question on the reconstruction. What's the definition of the reconstruction? Are we gonna take it all the way down?
yes, sir, all the way down. We'll probably last year we bid it out as far as 16 inches of aggregate versus 16 inches or 8 inches of aggregate with 8 inches of fly ash treatment. And the fly ash treatment was a lot higher, so what we might just bid it out 16 inches of base like we've been doing, and then a couple of the streets we're going to do concrete, and then a couple of them are going to bid out concrete versus asphalt. So we'll probably bring it back to you guys at a later date to determine this is the price for asphalt, this is the price of concrete, which would you guys like?
I think we need to make a point, this is not, don't have anything to do with the sales tax issue we passed in, what was it?
3 years ago.
10, I believe. This money doesn't come from that, this would be from a bond, is that correct?
This is the last phase of the bond project that was authorized by that sales tax.
Okay.
So these are still bond proceeds. This does not mean that we won't augment this budget with other money during the budget process. But
I think some of the confusions come from when you and I were under the impression that we had 3 years to get everything done early on. And now we're using the term phase 4, and that's probably where the confusion's coming in. Once that got clarified, now they're using the money, when we're still using the same amount of money, we just understood that it didn't have to be spent by a certain time. They were able to take their time and do the job.
That's where I was confused.
yeah, the 3-year thing is an arbitrage rule. And when a municipality issues bonds, you've got 3 years to spend it, because in the old days, if you held on to it for 6 years, you had the potential to make more money investing the money and getting interest off of it than you were paying for your tax-free rate. But because interest rates are so ridiculously low right now, there's not much difference between a tax-free rate and the taxable rate. So there's really no risk in us getting an arbitrage. So that's why we don't have to follow the 3-year.
Was we not gonna look at other options too, as far as grinding and to
Yes,
see
sir.
if we could use that money to get further instead of total reconstruction if we felt like the use was there?
Yes, sir. And this is just, since we are using the bond proceeds and the controversy that was surrounding the bond and the related litigation, we opted to continue with that profile just until the bonds were exhausted. When we move into discussions about continuing with the street program, but it coming from the city's budget, I think that's when we're going to start having that conversation about this particular street. The one on BJ Tunnel, I think is an excellent candidate for total reconstruction, simply because of the volume of traffic that goes on it. The others, there might be some questionable utility on that, but that particular street, I think, is a very good candidate for that particular design standard. But yes, to answer your question, we're definitely going to have a dialogue when we start talking about continuing on with street repairs, but using normal city budget for that rather than the bond proceeds.
Thank you.
And how that construction might differ from what we're currently doing is the point.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in another item that we're going to present here in just a moment.
Okay, item number 5, presentation on Rockdale Bridge. Tyler.
Yes, sir. This is a presentation on the Rockdale Bridge. We want to bring everybody up to speed on the bridge and let everyone know. We had a really, really interesting meeting with the county commissioner today from District 3. They do a lot of their own bridge works. They've helped us do some culverts before. We had a meeting with him today, and he said that they would be more than happy to help us with this bridge construction. So we find this very interesting because it would save the city substantial amount of money. Plus, we could all work together. And so, obviously, this is the Rockdale Bridge. Everybody knows, we have it narrowed down because of the last inspection. This is a new bridge. It'll have a walking trail there on the south side. So if we ever do the walking trail along through NEO or along that way, we'll have the trail to go through. This is a precast bridge, so it'll be built in the shop. It won't be built on the site. So it'll be built in the shop, and then we will just have it shipped out there by semi trucks, lifted off with a crane, and actually set on the piers and everything. There's 13 sections to this bridge. You can see all 13 sections. They're approximately 2 foot 9 inches wide. That's as wide as we can make them because of weight, shipping them here. Trying to think what else. We will have a pedestrian railing right here as is on the Central Avenue Bridge, and then we'll have a concrete railing on both sides for vehicle traffic, similar to the Central Avenue Bridge that we will kind of have a standard look for our bridges. This is our pedestrian railing. This should speed up construction considerably because it is made indoors, outside the elements, so we're not worried about weather days, rain days, different things like that. It's just a matter of doing the footings and everything, and then getting it on site. It'll also have lights. We have it designed to have lights similar to the Central Avenue Bridge. This is actually the side view or elevation view, as they call it on the plans of the bridge. We're going to have some sort of rock facade on the side of it, so people will see. If you know right now, it has somewhat of a curvature like the existing bridge does. Like I said, we talked to the county today. We've kind of been talking to them along the way, and they've been very happy to help us with it. Today we just kind of had plans to show them, and they said this is what they started out doing these. So they were really excited. So it would be just bringing an agreement back to you guys and to the county to work together to build this bridge.
Tyler, with the cooperative nature between the city and the county in this project, what would you project the cost would be in that scenario, and what the cost would be if we did not?
We haven't put a pencil to that, but you have to think, working with the county, we just would be paying their labor. Working with a private contractor, obviously you're paying their labor plus they want to make a living. So we haven't had a chance to put a pencil to it as far as what the difference would be, but we have a feeling it'd be a significant difference.
So when we get ready to start having this dialogue on us doing something different with streets compared to what we've been doing in this most recent street program, further dialogue with Ottawa County would really be beneficial, I think, to the taxpayer, because they have a certain investment in staff and in equipment that is not being utilized throughout the whole year. So we want to sit down with staff and the county and kind of pursue this possibility of us partnering on some street projects inside Miami where we might utilize some of those resources that they have. The benefit there being is that we could greatly reduce maybe some of the costs we're seeing in some of these projects that we've been bidding out the traditional route. We don't know for a fact yet that there will be, but we're very excited about the county's interest in sitting down and having this dialogue and talking about ways that we can partner more on some of these projects. So we will bring that back to you at a later date, but we wanted to kind of share with you a little bit about the progress that we're having with them on in these discussions.
Was there any discussion of timeline?
No, if everyone was in agreement to work with the county, we were going to obviously bid out the actual construction of the bridge, and then it'll just be a matter of getting it built. And then we kind of talked to the county, and they said once we get a time frame of when it'll be built, then we can schedule with us and be ready.
What's the lead time on ordering the precast parts?
everybody kind of had a different, the companies that make these right now, they kind of had a different opinion on just how soon we get it bid out. Our last step right now is we're waiting on environmental. Once we have environmental clearance, then we're going to set it out and bid it. So.
And so no action from us tonight, you're just making us aware of
Yes,
where
sir.
we stand with the process.
Tyler, in that environmental process, from a hydraulic standpoint, we have to be very careful about putting back what's
Currently there.
what's currently there, because if we change that, then that requires additional analysis.
Yes, sir.
You mean the span?
Anything that would impact the hydraulic capacity of the waterway would require additional review. If we go back with it exactly the same and we match what's there now, it would be much more simple than proposing something different.
Hydraulics are actually, to match it, it's a little bit increased, but not significantly.
Yeah.
I think it's about 5% more on the hydraulic.
Okay, well, that sounds very exciting. I know that the county has helped us in the past on kind of an ad hoc basis, but if we can formalize a relationship and take advantage of some of the economies they have, that would really be
Yes, sir.
beneficial to the taxpayers. Okay, thank you, Tyler. Now we're going to go to item 7, and it sounds like it's Tyler Klein.
Yes, sir.
Truck route update and traffic light warrant schedule.
John Snyder, we've been working with him in Anderson Engineering on this project, and he kind of put everything together, so we'll let him talk for this.
Okay, we went, these are just an overview of the warrants. You saw the one that ODOT did, but these are actually individual warrants and what justifies. The first 3 are traffic related, then you have some that are people, which is the pedestrian, school children. The last 3 are special ones where you consider how traffic moves together, whether the signals are coordinated, and do we have crashes and railroads. If you go to the next slide.
And this is the truck route that we're
This is for
talking
the
about,
truck
just
route.
so everybody's clear.
And we, the way we did this, we teamed up with Tyler, and the Public Works took all the traffic counts. We do them at 15-minute increments, and then we did them at the Central Avenue, also 3rd Avenue, and basically did them over a 3-day period so that we could get a good 12-hour segment. So these cover the 3, and then, you know, we obviously wanted to make sure we had good data on the morning, noon, and then evening traffic. Next slide. I know you can't see this, but all those data, there's about, I don't know, 150 sheets. All those counts get put into here, and we look at how many cars go through, how many taking left turns, how many take right turns. Normally, we look at the same thing with trucks, through trucks, left turn, right turn. In this case, we were trying to get an idea also the type of truck so that we could better design the truck route. So we looked at whether the trucks were tractor trailer, dump trucks, box trucks, school buses, things like that.
If you notice in the orange, those are people that turn the wrong way.
Yeah,
That's down there.
out there.
We had to include that so our data was accurate.
Next slide. This is the same for Central. We missed, I think miscommunication. I think one of the 15-minute periods was missed, so we ended up taking the period prior and the period after and average them. And it didn't look like it didn't really affect the data that much because it was fairly uniform. Next slide. Just to kind of go over overview, Central is the one we have the 2A, and you'll see when we do have a rail, we have actually 2 rails that are nearby, and that'll come up later in one of the warrants we'll look at. And then if you'll notice there's a building that's on the southwest corner that's right on, there's no setback, it's right on the right of way, and that'll come up a little bit later. That's the building with there's no roof on it right now, it's kind of an abandoned building. Let's go to the next slide. And then 3rd Avenue, similar setup, except this time we have a 1-way going into 2-way, so it's the 1-way from NEO, and then it picks up a 2-way. We also have a rail there, it's a little bit farther, which will come into play later, and then also the NEO feed building is right there too. And that'll come up also in one of the warrants. Next slide. When we do the warrants, we look at the traffic. So typically, in this case, we try to get from 7 to 7, and we're doing 15-minute increments. And we look at what the peak hour. So we have to do a rolling peak hour. 7 to 8, 7:15 to 8:15, 8:30 to 8:30. You do a rolling peak hour, a rolling 4-hour, and a rolling 8-hour. And so when we show these, they won't all be exactly the same, but they'll be similar. This happened to be the peak 8-hour count for Central Avenue. And we go through the warrants. There's one warrant for 8-hour traffic, one's for 4-hour, one's for 1 hour. So it kind of covers the different reasons that you could want to have an intersection to help improve the safety and improve the traffic flow. So here, one thing you'll notice on the 8-hour on Central, you've got about 1,200 cars. They're about the same cars going north as there are going southbound. And then you'll notice on Central, we got about a third as many going east-west. And then you'll see you have more coming from NEO, and this happens to be in the, basically picking up the late morning to early evening traffic. And it's probably, the traffic is probably from the NEO, the college, and also from the high school. Some of that is coming one way, and we don't have the morning traffic going in. So volume-wise, it's a little bit one-directional. Truck-wise, you can see we've got twice as many trucks going northbound as we have southbound. And Tyler and I and Joe were talking about it. We might have trucks that are coming in on Steve Owens, going north, and either coming back on A Street or taking the 69, coming back on going southbound.
It's interesting too, if everyone will notice how many trucks we have. A lot of people ask, how many semis do we have? You can see that during the 8-hour period we had 144 semi-tractor trailers.
So it's about one truck every 5-6 minutes going north, and then one truck every about 3 minutes going north, and coming south, it's about one every 6 minutes.
And that is on the truck route?
The truck route in Central, right there at that intersection.
And
But
the
they'd be
truck
traveling
would be-
down the truck route.
How
the
about
truck-
Allen Sign Studio?
Your truck would consider an 18-wheeler or a straight truck? Or
Now, in this
a-
case, we're talking all the trucks. We're talking tractor trailer, box trucks, anything with a dual-wheeled axle in the back. We do have the
But that's
breakdown
a lot-
before, but for
a lot of
traffic,
difference in weights, though.
right. For structurally, that's why we need that other data. For traffic-wise, for the counts and the warrants, a truck is a truck in that sense. So we're looking at it just in terms of trucks and passenger cars. So in that sense, for the
So we don't
signal
know how
part.
many semi-trucks went down through there.
Right. Yeah, I could get back with you on that. We haven't kind of gotten to that yet, but my instinct is probably about half were either tractor trailer or dump truck.
Because what you talked about last time was the amount of weight based on the
Exactly. And that-
tandems versus
Right. That's
a
why we
regular
took
car.
a little greater detail on that. But yeah, we'll look at that because that'll be very important for the structural part of the road, for the volume and the signals, and just a truck in itself is fine. And then if you go to the next slide, this happens to be the 8-hour. This one is I believe the 4-hour. It's the same intersection. You see that it's a slightly different time. The 4-hour still has 6:15 as the tail end, but I'm sorry, I think we went one to me. This is the 1 hour. The 8-hour.
It's not there.
Oh, must be a gremlin. Here we're on the 8-hour on 3rd Avenue. It's similar to the one on Central, except obviously you see on Central we've got one way, so we shouldn't have any traffic going eastbound. We had one car try to go through and one tried to take a left turn onto the one way. We picked up a few more cars, so there's some cars that are coming off the side street between the intersections, and the number of trucks have decreased. So some of the trucks are going off to the businesses, east or west, as it's going up. Next slide. Yeah, we also had the 4-hour on Central, which is center, and this is the 4-hour on 3rd Street. You can see it's similar to the 8-hour, except a little bit higher volume because between the 4 hours, there's a little bit more volume. But one thing we found, the traffic that goes on D Street or the truck route is fairly uniform throughout the day. And so that it turns out to be the 8-hour average travel for the volume is what's going to control as far as the warrants. Next slide. And then the peak hour, like you'd expect, is near going home, leaving work. For 3rd Street, it was 4:30 to 5:30. I think for Central, it was 5 to 6 o'clock, or 5:15, 6:15. So then we apply those traffic volumes to the warrants. And the first warrant basically saying it looks at an 8-hour volume, and is there enough volume on the major road and enough on the the intersecting minor road that would cause undue delay, undue hindrance. And when you look at it strictly by the warrants, neither one would warrant a signal. However, some of those warrants have guidelines in it, and if you consider Miami, like even though it's 13,000, we consider ourselves a small city. There's a guideline at 10,000. If you applied the guideline at 10,000, then Central would fall in warranting a signal. And then D Street still would not. If you go back one, Jess. Then we went through the 4-hour, the second warrant, and the peak hour. Although there's a fair amount of volume, we don't have enough to warrant a signal based on the 4-hour or the 1 hour. That's why I was talking about the 8-hour. It's a fairly significant volume, but it's spread out throughout the day. And then we also looked at pedestrian schools. There was pedestrian. In order to meet that warrant, you've got to have a couple hundred people crossing, and we don't even. I think we had 5 on one, and Central we didn't have any. As far as a per hour basis, schools there was no school crossing, so that didn't apply. Next slide. The coordinated signal is kind of I don't know if you've heard the word platooning. When you have 2 or more intersections, sometimes you'll have traffic come together as a group, and if the signals aren't coordinated, you can get these groups where you have 5 vehicles coming down that meet another 5, and then now you have 10. In this case, we don't have that. We're looking at the opposite. If we took 1 or more intersections out, would you have that? Right now, the traffic's flowing pretty well, so that really wouldn't apply in this case. Where this starts to apply is also, besides the 8-hour volume, is the crash experience. In Central Avenue, we had 7 crashes, I think, over a 1-year time period. So that's where the criteria is of 5 crashes. Now, we don't have the details. The 5 crashes where the criteria apply is it was caused because of the not having a signal. In this case, we have a signal. So having 7 crashes, it all depends on how the signal in the intersection is oriented. Sometimes when you pull a signal out, you can get slight increase in traffic crashes. And we'll go into a little bit more detail, but I think in this, a lot of those, if we got into the details, we'd find it may be caused by the sight triangles, because either on the left-hand turn or the right-hand turn, there's a building that's in the way. And in order to make that turn, you have to go farther into the intersection. And so I think if we looked at some of that, I think Central might warrant having the signal, but the 3rd Avenue may not warrant having a signal based on the number of crashes. Roadway network, that would be if both these roads were like Main and BJ Tunnel. They're the roadway network. They're both major roads, and you could consider it if it had enough volume. In this case, Central just doesn't have the volume that it probably once had. As far as railroad, we are close. The positive thing is that on 3rd Avenue, it's a one-way right now, so that wouldn't apply for us. Plus also distance-wise, we're far enough outside. It's a 140-foot minimum distance, and we're probably 10, 20 foot beyond on both of them. And then we also already have cross bars in effect, so we've got some additional safety. The big thing that would cover is that there's a section that it's not a warrant, but when you go to the section that talks about removal of intersections, you have to make sure that you have what's called a sight triangle. So basically when you're sitting at the intersection, and if you're going to take a right turn, that you can see down the right side and see the oncoming traffic and make your judgment on, do I have enough time to turn, can I make it? Or if you're making a left-hand turn, can I see the traffic coming on and make a safe left-hand turn? What you have on Central Avenue is we got a building when you're on Central going towards the college. There's a building right there. And I went ahead and just looked today. I spent 15 minutes just trying to watch trucks and where they stop. They're stopping well behind the building, and yeah, they would have to have gone farther into the intersection to make that turn if there wasn't the stop light right there. And then the same thing at on 3rd when you're coming from NEO, going there onto the truck route. You've got the NEO building. They're stopping even farther back, and they can't. There's no way they could see. I think they must be some comfort in knowing that the signal's there, and they're stopping farther back. So as far as looking at it, having that sight triangle, if we wanted to remove it, we'd have to remove the distance and be able to see left or right on those. So, and if you go to the next slide, I think if you want to see, we've got some photos in the back, I think that could kind of show the obstructions you have. This is basically the sight triangle. That distance A is It's 14.5 feet. Basically, that's where you would stop at the stop bar, and that would cover your distance where you're in the driver's seat, sitting in your car. And then B is going to be about 440 feet, 490 feet. And then when you look out, you'll see at the first intersection, I think Central, on the next slide, Jeff, that building off to the lower left. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that's right here. This is the view that you see as you come out there. That's right across from the sign shop off to the left. But like I said, I saw a few cars I wanted to see it for myself. And they do pull far enough back. Even some people are trying to crawl into the intersection. They're still far enough back where they can't see. So that building to the right, and probably the next, there's a residential building there, an older one. Those probably two would have to come out. These are just different views from that same intersection, so you could see just how it looks. If you go to
You're saying they'd have to come out if we took the light down, is that
Right.
the implication?
right. And there's that building off to the far right. Then if you go to the next couple slides, you'll see, we'll get onto 3rd Avenue, and you can see that building there is just a little bit closer. That's the NEO feed building off to the lower right. And then the next slide will show that. And you can kind of see a faded left turn signal. Most of the cars park where their bumper is right at that, right before that. It's actually probably just in front of that water hydrant. So you can see they're far enough back that they're trusting the signal totally and not relying on it visually. But this would be very important here to be able to see that. And obviously with NEO still having the building, that'd be an issue to kind of work through. So the bottom line, Central looks like it would probably warrant a signal. It depends on how you would like to look at it. But Third Avenue would be one, I think, a candidate. It probably was there back in the day when maybe the volume going to NEO, there was a concerted effort to have traffic go to NEO and the traffic to come back. Maybe the volumes were a little higher, and at that time, maybe that's what was warranted to have that
So you're saying
intersection.
the traffic count doesn't warrant a signal, but the sight lines do. And so if we were
Right.
to take that out, we would have to do something about the building.
Yes.
And the impetus for all of this conversation was, what are we gonna do to the truck route? How are we gonna construct it? And do these extra lights contribute to the wear and tear?
Yes.
Correct.
And we wanted to show how many cars travel down this route in 8 hours. So that was interesting.
John, with this being a one-way street and a do not enter, the traffic is coming from the other direction. Never mind.
Right, it's coming from the left. And I can tell that even for the people that do travel, I was there 15 minutes, maybe 20, 30 cars. I think I even saw a couple that looked like they were going to go in, and then they turned. There must be the one way going in and out, kind of like Dave was talking about, or you were talking about the couplet. I think at its time that was a couplet that was well known and well used. I think it's not really well used now. I think probably most of the traffic on NEO either comes down on
Second.
either on Second going in or coming on Central, or they're leaving and going out on I can't losing blank BJ Tunnel.
Yeah.
Coming out that way, and so they're using that instead of, and they've kind of abandoned this street. Even here when I'm stopping, if there wasn't for that building, there's quite a few times when trucks and cars are stopping, waiting for no cross traffic. And the traffic's only there probably, at that 7 to 8, 12 to 1, and 5 to 6 time frame.
Doug, do they still use that building, do you know?
Which building that?
Storage or?
NEO feed?
Yeah, it's business in there.
It's business.
Yeah, it's a feed store.
I knew it was, I didn't know if they were still active or not.
Yeah.
And we did this all by hand to kind of keep our costs low, but I was just showing that if we did a lot of this, we might consider renting one of these so that you could automate this and download the data straight. But I think it worked well with the guys doing it. We ended up doing a small class, and I think Rick taught 12 of them, 10 or 12, and they kind of split up the intersection work.
So, where do we go from here? we talking about the type of construction that we're gonna do on this road still? Is that what we're leading to with this conversation?
Well, I think part of it was just for planning, can we consider taking an intersection out and then?
Yeah, we
also-
thought if we redo the whole truck route, then that would be time that if the lights were going to remove, then we could remove
Okay.
them then.
When you say remove, you mean remove lights or close streets?
Remove lights.
Okay.
You'd probably go to, just like what Tyler was talking about, if you did do this, you do a 90-day training period, like the manual says, where you train the drivers into doing this. And if you did this during the construction, you'd have the added benefit. People would be looking for alternate ways to get across the truck route, so they'd already be, your training would start well ahead and during the construction. So, and then you'd have a lot more time to announce what was going on and what the impact. And I think by the time construction got done, people would already know, I've got to take this route if I want to be able to go fast, or I come down this road and I'm going to be at a stop sign.
Given the different traffic patterns that you described, and we're assuming a little bit about BJ Tunnel
Right.
and Central, do we still need the one-ways on Second and Third the way they are?
I don't know. I think I think you could be justified in looking at making those two-way residential streets. I think maybe a discussion with NEO just to, probably politically to
Sure.
make sure that, here's what our intent was. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of dedicated traffic going that, other than they take the one-ways because they have to take the one-ways.
Okay.
Your Honor, what we would recommend at this particular time is that you give us a little time to digest this information and come back with you with a more formal recommendation on D Street. Earlier I mentioned that we've had this dialogue going on between us and Ottawa County. That dialogue is also extended to this particular street. So we want a little time to explore that with the county and talk about the possibility of a JV on this particular road. I think the county is very interested in making sure that, that there's some visibility in the cooperation between the city and the county in regard to road improvements. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to sit down and talk about how far we can take that discussion in the context of this particular street.
Part of the impetus for the conversation was Russell Earls, Commissioner Earls, either via the newspaper or however, heard the numbers that were being thrown around about how much it was going to cost for us to redo the truck route. And he felt like with a collaborative effort that they could help us do it for considerably less. And so we're certainly interested in pursuing that. Okay, thank you. Item number 7, update on water sewer loan and advanced metering infrastructure.
Okay, so tonight we're bringing back for the AMI. We've talked about it previously. Some of the same, you'll see some of the same slides. We're just kind of looking for direction on how you want us to proceed on this. Everybody remembers just how fiber works. It's a fiber optic technology used to carry massive amounts of information. And then kind of the goal of AMI, what it refers to, the measure, collect, and analyze energy usage from advanced devices, so electric meters, gas meters, and water meters through a two-way communication. So we'd be looking, obviously, at electric and water meters for us. The benefits, we've talked about these before. Kevin brought up another benefit that I never thought of because I haven't read meters before, but he said, more and more people are wanting their privacy, so they're building privacy fences. And with privacy fences comes that we can't get in their backyard to view their meters, or, they have a vicious dog and you don't want to get in there with their dog. So we have to scope a lot of them. So by having AMI, you wouldn't have to have people back there in their yards and looking for this information. We wanted to talk a little bit more about the different implementation options that we could go if we go with the AMI route. So we could do an RFP, which is a monthly fee. We talked to a company recently that does this, GE, which I'll talk about in a little bit in a second, that has done this in a few cities. Then we could have where the city bids it out and a company provides a service. So a company comes in, we bid it out, whoever gets the bid comes in, installs all the meters, you know, the water meters and electric meters, and then they leave, and the city is this, you know, then we run everything. We could do construction management at risk, similar to the NEO project, which we'll talk about, you know, where pretty much they have all the risk. The city just kind of participates in the project and oversees it, but the manager takes all the risk, and then this construction management. The request for proposals, this is what we talked about last time. Claremore, we talked a little bit more with GE about this. Claremore, for 10 years, their cost is $3.99 per meter. So this is for their water meter and their electric meter. They pay $3.99 each for. So they have approximately 17,971 meters. So the total comes to, you see there, 8.6 million for the 10 years. This covers all the equipment. So if the meter goes out in 2 years, they come in and replace the meter. If something goes wrong internally with the meter, they come in and replace it. There's a bunch of different examples that they had that they just came in and replaced it free.
Now, Tyler, the 17,000, that's very close to what we would have, considering both water and electric here.
I think, yeah.
Little less, but not much.
And just to be clear, this isn't talking about fiber.
No.
One
No,
option
no.
we discussed. This is just,
This is just
them
an
coming
option.
in, doing their thing. Okay.
Coming in, doing their thing. We have nothing to do with it, and the city just pays them a fee for each meter.
One of the very interesting things about GE's proposal that has really got us to thinking is that they have the ability to put certain customers on a prepaid account, just like a prepaid cell phone. In some of those situations, you literally can go stick your credit card in the meter and charge it up. Others would be similar to Pipe Pass. If you have a Pipe Pass account, you know that you put a deposit on and they send you a notice when you're low. Where the advantage would be for Miami, if you recall several months ago, we had a big discussion about our accounts receivable, where we were looking at about $1 million in uncollectibles in our accounts receivable on accounts that have not honored the payment of their account. And most of those we have discovered are in rental properties. During that dialogue, we talked about putting a lien on the meter, whereby the water or electricity was not turned back on to that residence until the past due account was. And we had quite a bit of pushback from the landlord community. In a prepaid meter situation, there would be no financial obligation to the landlord, but there's still a lien on the meter. If your credit is deemed to be less than perfect in that scenario, and we wanted to put you on a large deposit, or could put you on the ability for you to just simply pay as you go, you would charge at the meter. The benefit to us then is we don't have an accounts receivable in the situation, because then the power or the water is purchased before it's actually used. And then if you get in a situation similar to what we did in this last month, where we had a number of properties, is that slide in here?
It's later on.
It's later on, okay. I won't steal that thunder, but when you find out that there really were some electrical consumption issues in some of those properties that led to such high bills, this would be an immediate warning to the property owner that that's going on, because the account would just run out of money before you got to the point where you had ran it up to a really high dollar amount. So it was a very unique element. We're not sure it's available with other vendors. We haven't asked that at this point, but it was something that GE offered.
This is the company provides the service. Like I talked about, the city bids it out. The company just comes in, installs all the meters, the hardware to run it, and then they leave. Construction management risk, this is like we talked about. This is similar to NEO. We would hire a consultant to design our system, and then we would hire a construction manager at risk to come in and install the meters, or hire subcontractors to do the work. So obviously there's a lot less risk for the city.
So contrasting those back, when we look at these different options, this particular one for request for proposals does not include fiber. But when we move to the CMAR process, that definitely is a model that would include fiber.
So just if we just went construction management, there's some different construction companies out there that do this. They also do the CMAR option. So a lot of people say the CMAR would be cost savings to the city. because the construction manager at risk is looking out for the best interest of the city. Then the city managed the project, but that's not really our expertise.
Yeah, this is not a core competency for the city, so.
Other options. So if we go to the AMI, then we could go to the fiber, which we talked about. And so, if we had the fiber, we could have cable, video, and internet. Like we brought last time, different cities provide this. We met with Mr. Bishop, I'm trying to remember. Salsa. We met with Salsa, and they run this. They run their own cable, video, and internet service. And this is their 7th year, I believe, and they're just starting to break even right now. But we've kind of talked to him a little bit about it, and they're super excited about doing this. And they said we would like you guys to go with this route and then do the meters, the AMI meters, so we could see how it goes. And then if it goes good, then we would like to do it too. So they said they have already done it, but it's kind of a funding issue right now. So once they have some more available funds, and they will go that route with their fiber. Fiber to the home. So this is like we talked about, installing fiber to people's homes. So you could have video, cable, internet. Kind of the study that was brought 3 or 4 months ago, they talked about doing kind of a hybrid system where we would run fiber, and then we would have collectors around the city that would communicate with the meters. There's been some talks of doing drops to every house, to electric meter at every house. That way that we'd already have the fiber there. So if they wanted to do cable and internet and telephone, then it would be right there, and it would just be something that we could hook up to them. There's just kind of how you see it goes to the house. Like I said, there's the hybrid system that they talked about doing in the study. And here's Salsa. Like I said, they've selected a new carrier, so they're looking at cutting $175,000 per year in cost. They have 268 channels, and 40 of these are being HD. And it seems like a lot of that depends on who you get as your provider for these services. They said they're looking at upgrading these a lot. It was just finding a different provider for these services. In their residential internet, it's 3.5 and
Go back. How are they? It says they plan on increasing the megabytes over the next few months.
by just having a different provider. They were, I believe it was it one that they were looking at changing their head into?
Because the pipe size is there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the restricting situation in South Saw is that the head-in, when they built the head-in, the technology was limited at that time. It's much broader now. And where their pipe goes, they tie into somebody else's system, and that was also a limiting factor.
Well, and Jeff has mentioned this before, but, we talk about our community and economic development and what are the advantages that we have being on I-44, being one of them things like that. But having fiber would also be a significant advantage. Just happened last night to we watching a show, and Eric Schmidt from Google was on there, and Google is getting into the fiber business, and they're doing it in 4 communities. It'd be wonderful if we could have been one of those test communities, but they're talking about the 1 gig download, and they anticipate the economies in those communities just exploding as a result. And so I certainly would encourage us to look very hard at that for a variety of reasons.
These are some of the cities that have their own fiber to the home. You see Kansas City's up there, and they have Google Fiber in Kansas City, and some other cities around. So if we had fibers, obviously some different things we could provide. So we could have a phone, we could have internet, and we could have video.
Tyler, on this section right here with Salisal, did they have, or in your conversations with them, did you get into lessons learned on their part as far as thinking about our core competencies and what implementing something like that might be for us as a city? What was some of the things that they shared?
I'm trying to think of the main things they shared. When they started off, it seemed like that they were kind of discouraged just from emails back and forth because they didn't have a lot of people that enrolled. But then once somebody on the block enrolled and talked about how good their cable was, how fast their internet was, then everybody on the block had it. It was kind of a slow, but once they got going, I mean, they're in their 7th year and they're looking at breaking even, which he said that would be wonderful. They could break even, because then, you know, a couple years down the road, they looked at actually being in the black.
Is that faster or slower than what they thought their return on investment would?
I think it's faster.
Faster?
The other things that they said is they had to do it over with again. They would not have done phone. They would not have gotten into the phone supply business. They originally intended to run customer service parallel. In other words, if you wanted to come in and pay your cable bill, you'd be using the same customer service people that you were paying your electric to. They found that that didn't work, and they wound up having to split that off. So they used the same space. It was just a different counter. Was the communication stuff. Same thing happened with their crew. They thought they would use the electric crew to service the fiber. They quickly found out that didn't work either for them, and they wound up running 2 separate crews, one for fiber and one for electric.
Did they wish they'd done the retail or the wholesale? Did they second guess that decision?
They have not second guessed that decision, but they had a very unique situation in Salisal in the sense that they didn't have a very good service to begin with. Okay. And you know, we're not going to make any value judgments on the availability or what the quality of the service is in Miami, but we don't really get a lot of complaints in that regard. So that's why the last time we did this presentation to you, we're still partial to the wholesale option as opposed to the retail, simply because it is not one of our core competencies. And now, you know, when we say that, though, just because an organization doesn't have that as a core competency doesn't mean you can't acquire that as a core competency. You can hire a management team, you can hire experts in that field, and you can take that on. I mean, but as we're currently structured, it would be easier for us to deal with this on a wholesale basis than on a retail basis.
So if you started out wholesale, could you switch over? So maybe that's a transition in the
right.
future?
The wholesale thing provides you with the opportunity where that you're basically still driving the bus. You're just choosing to take contract for the service as opposed to providing yourself. But the beauty of the community itself owning the infrastructure then is that you've always got some control of your destiny in that sense. That if that provider is causing problems, then, you know, customers could petition the city to say, we don't really want you using that provider anymore. Could you find us somebody else, please?
And there has been a provider that has shown interest in.
Yeah, and I'm when we're done here, I'm going to give you a recommendation on what I think is probably the best, for lack of a better term, the sweet spot in this entire scenario.
From the study, this is just bringing it back with a study that was done. It was $4.25 million to construct everything, and then with city crews, it was $10.2 million. This was from the study that was done by ACRS last fall. Some different financing options. We've talked to the bonding company, the rural utilities broadband loan program. I don't know that our area would fit their criteria for a loan, but it was brought up that we could look at that route. If we do, such as through a bond, if you look at borrowing $14 million, you kind of show the different payments. And then the next step, how we want to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. And with that being said, given all of the variables that are before us, the one salient point that keeps coming up is core competency. And in looking at this situation in Miami and in exploring how other communities have fared in this process, it's become very apparent to me that there's a lot to go wrong, and it's very difficult to get it just right. And in places where they've attempted these different approaches, some things have worked well, some things have not. So what I would recommend to you, and because we've had such remarkable success with it on the Red Robertson Event Center project, is to explore the construction manager at risk process and go out and hire the firm that you think has the expertise to put together this project. And not tie their hands in the beginning with the route that you think that you need to go. Basically, we go out, recruit the construction manager at risk, have them come back to us and help us with making some of these core business decisions and how we go to each step at that point in time. We're relying on their expertise, selecting someone on their core competency. And then we take a look at each of these in a smaller segment as we're going along and before we enter into the final contract with the CMAR on what we want the build out to be. Now, from a financing standpoint, it's pretty clear to me right now that we have some very unique opportunities from a financing standpoint. There's never been a bonding market quite like this one. In fact, I had a conversation with our bond advisor this morning, informed me the rates went down a little bit more today. So you've got some options with the leasing from the different vendors. You've got some options where you get turnkey from the firm that does the project using their products. To the point of where you would have some type of a cafeteria approach where you pick this and pick that. Again, it comes down to the fact that I think if we bring in somebody whose core competency is doing projects like this, we're going to be better off in the long run that would help us go through these. But I think really moving forward, because of the fact that we've got a water bond that we want to take a look at to do water improvements, there's certainly economies of scale in marrying the financing with that all at one time. When we buy down issuance costs, legal review, and so on and so forth. So at this point in time, staff would recommend that the council consider the possibility of putting out an RFP. I guess it wouldn't be an RFP, it would be an RFQ for a construction manager at risk company we would articulate in the RFQ what we're looking for, and then bring those back to you and let you look at those firms, look at their qualifications, look at their track history, and then make a decision on whether you want to bring some of those in for interviews and talk with them and further, or whether it just spurs you to more questions and want to take it to this next level. The one thing that we want to make sure is that we take this, slow enough that we're carefully vetting each element of it so that we can thoroughly explore where the pitfalls would be in each one of these. But I have never seen a situation where I think a community would benefit more from AMI than Miami, given our the age of our infrastructure and the weather that we have, the history we've had with customer service issues, and so on and so forth. I think it's something that we really need to pursue and continue on with it on the front burner.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back.
Thank you, sir.
Decide how to do what we're going to do, okay? 5-minute break, please.
We're going to get some more.
Back from our short break, and Jeff, I think you were kind of summarizing your recommendation to this group. If you would kind of give us another quick synopsis of where you think we need to go next, please.
Yes, sir. My recommendation to you is to put out an RFQ for interested firms to serve as a construction manager at risk. And that process would allow you to select somebody based on their qualifications, their background, their expertise in this, and then allow them to come in and work with you in putting together the preferred route that you should take, given your current situation.
You're not even suggesting that we decide right now whether we're going to do fiber or not. Just
yes, sir. I'm recommending that you hire an expert at this point in time. I'm saying that I think staff has taken this as far as we are comfortable in taking it at this point.
Are you asking RFQs though?
RFQs, yeah, and we don't need direction from you to do it. We can put on an RFQ. We'll just bring it back to you at a later date. But if we're looking for consensus, if there's no objection, we'll develop an RFQ and circulate that.
okay. If there's an objection, please speak up. There being none, we are going to move then to item 8, and which is executive session pursuant to 25 OS 307B4. Somewhere we have a motion, and just so the audience knows, we are going to adjourn to the conference room upstairs for this particular session. And how long do you think we'll be, Jeff?
In the executive session,
Yeah,
Uh,
an hour or so?
at least an hour, Your
Okay,
Honor.
it's gonna be pretty lengthy. So, of course, you're all welcome to stay as long as you'd like. Or just stay tuned in, but we are gonna be quite a while tonight. So, we're looking for,
I'm trying to find a
yes,
source.
the
sorry.
but
slide.
you, frankly, you could, since it's published, the basis for the executive session is specifically stated on the agenda, and we don't, well, we do have a slide now, I apologize, we have one up.
Okay, I'm gonna save Neil the talking tonight.
I was gonna do it.
Oh, well, go, please.
I move the council to enter executive session to discuss the investigation of the allegations in the Jerry Payne federal complaint and possible responses thereto, based upon our attorney's advice that public disclosure would seriously impair our ability to process the matter in the public interest, to discuss pending IAFF and FOP negotiations, and to discuss employment contracts with City Manager Jeff Bishop, City Attorney David Anderson, Police Chief George Harrelson, and Paralegal Krista Duhan.
Second, Mayor.
Roll call, please.
McLean,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Charbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, we're gonna recess to the conference room upstairs, and we'll be back Sunday.
So just show that you took no action on anything and then you adjourned.
So we're not making any action on anything
No?
on SUA. How come?
Ready, sir.
Just declare about it. You're on.
Okay, we are back from our short intermission, and we are moving on to, actually, item number 9. There's going to be action on item B only, which is approve annual employment contracts per contract language as amended for David Anderson. May I have a motion, please?
Motion approved, Mayor.
And a second?
Second.
I have a question to amend,
David's.
to, does it need to be specific?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion, but you-
I said the language as amended, which includes just the changing of the
from
terminology.
of appearing on the consent calendar to, or agenda to appearing on the agenda.
Correct, yes.
Deleting the consent agenda language, the
But we're
requirement.
okay, so place on first regular meeting in March.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, we had George's on here also. So, okay, well, we had a motion and we had a second for David's contract. So, can you roll call, please?
Johnson.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Charbit.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, it's late and I'm now confused. The motion was to vote yes on the contract, to renew the contract as amended, and the amendment was to change it from consent agenda to regular agenda, yes?
Regular agenda, first meeting in March.
Right.
Right. You're not putting on the first meeting of March this year, you're just,
No.
understood. Thank you so much.
And also George Harrelson's contract. I'd like to go ahead and get
Motion
care of that.
approved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Point of honor,
Yes.
point of order, Your Honor, that was changing his contract to reflect 10 hours of vacation as opposed to the language that's currently in there.
Yes.
And also
To-
the amended,
Date.
Yes,
Date.
Right.
and alter the date.
Charbit.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, item number 10 is motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Charbit.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. That meeting is over. We are now going to call to order the February 21st meeting. No, that was
25th.
posted, excuse me.
Keep going down.
The February 25th meeting of the SUA at 4 p.m. or immediately thereafter, whichever comes first or second.
Wow.
Item number 2 is going to be no action. Item number 3, approve annual employment contracts per contract language or as amended for David Anderson. And that amendment was to change the requirement for the contract to appear on the consent agenda to just the regular agenda, and the date required, the deadline, to the first meeting in March.
Point here, do we need to table yours or do we need to table Jeff's?
We didn't, we left his alone in the first one, we just did David and George, so I'm asking specifically about David's. Although I understand it was listed A, B, I'm just
You have
suggesting on
until-
item B.
You have until April 1st on him, so you can put it back on.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with mine until April Fool's Day.
Need a motion?
So, yes, please.
Motion to approve.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Item 4 is adjournment. Motion to adjourn, please.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.